Welcome back to the Well Dwellers podcast. I'm Eric Freiberger, and today is going to be a time for me to share a Well Dwellers moment. So I wrote an article back in the early 2000s while in my undergraduate studies at Alberta Bible College, and I'm hoping to share it with you today. It was originally intended as an exercise of seeing the Apostle Paul's letters to the Corinthians of his time as encouragement for the disabled people of today. Now, there's a lot to say about the challenges and struggles disabled face in our society today, of course. First, there's the political injustices with policies changing or being made to financial security and supports such as AISH, assured income for the severely handicapped. The lack of representation and the implementation of a provincial accessibility act here in Alberta. And of course, MAID, with the injustices of indignity to human life through the abuses of the medical assistance in dying. Healthcare costs, of course, are also on the list, and management as the government forces more people into privatized care models and private clinics, which are ill-equipped and not accessible. And then there's also a care aid crisis that's going on in our communities with the lack of workers, not to mention the burnout, overworked, underfunded, and poorly managed agency workers left to handle the many who cannot afford private care companies. And lastly, I want to highlight the challenge of a spiritual vacuum of faith community institutions and lack of church advocacy and the willingness to engage in disabled theological equipping for the members and leadership. Man, I could just keep going on with more challenges that are out there, but I think you get the picture. But what we really need to hear today are the strong words of encouragement, words of support, promise, and inspiration to endure while fighting the good fight. The Apostle Paul's words, particularly. As I reflect on how my approach back in the early 2000s, when I first wrote this paper, I recognize it kind of became more of an almost declaration for myself and those who are also physically disabled in the beginnings of this century. But as I read it again today, almost 2 decades and a half later, I can see both how Paul's words transcend time in their truths and meanings, but also reveal deeper truths to the journey of maturity that I have taken in my own understandings of disability, faith, or spirituality, and life. Perhaps before we get into that, however, I would like to take a few moments and share this article focusing on the words of the Apostle Paul to the disabled people of today. So we begin in the voice of Paul. The physical challenges of this world are far from few as they come to us from all sides. We may face many dangers and challenges by the people and places of this world, but they are no different from the many challenges to which I have faced within my own life. I have traveled many weary miles. I have faced dangers from flooded rivers and from robbers. I have faced dangers from my own people, the Jews, as well as from the Gentiles. I have faced dangers in the cities, in the deserts, and on the stormy seas. And I have faced danger from men who claim to be Christians, but are not. Yes, we live under constant danger of death because we serve Jesus, so that the life of Jesus will be obvious in our dying bodies. Both Christians and physical structures may tell us we have no place in this world, but it is our actions and the way we live our lives today that will show our place in this world and the next. In the words of Richard J. Foster, joy, not grit, is the hallmark of holy obedience. We need to be lighthearted in what we do to avoid taking ourselves too seriously. It is a cheerful revolt against self and pride. Our work is jubilant, carefree, and merry. Utter abandonment to God is done freely and with celebration. And so I urge you to enjoy this ministry of self-surrender. Don't push too hard. Hold this work lightly, joyfully. The saints throughout the ages have witnessed to this reality. You know, of course, that they are not speaking of a silly, superficial, bubbly kind of joy like that flaunted in modern society. No, this is a deep, resonant joy that has been shaped and tempered by the fires of suffering and sorrow. Joy through the cross, joy because of the cross. I think you ought to know, dear friends, about the trouble we went through in the province of Asia. We were crushed and completely overwhelmed, and we thought we would never live through it. In fact, we expected to die. But as a result, we learned not to rely on ourselves, but on God who can raise the dead. And He did deliver us from mortal danger, and we are confident that He will continue to deliver us. Our vision of God's kingdom is centered not upon the mortal dangers and temporary sufferings of this life, such as our physical challenges, but on the far greater vision of an eternal spiritual and physical growth in a world that is present but has not yet come to full revelation. Maltby Babcock brings a definition to our physical challenges and our focus on the world to come when he wrote, "Present suffering is not enjoyable, but life will be worth little without it. The difference between iron and steel is fire, but steel is worth all its costs. Iron ore may think itself senselessly tortured in the furnace, but when the watch spring looks back, it knows better." David enjoyed pain and trouble no more than we do, but the time came when he admitted that they had been good for him. Though the aspect of suffering is hard, the prospect is hopeful, and the retrospect will start a song if we are the called according to His purpose in suffering. It is easy to become distracted and blinded from this vision when we face our present physical sufferings, but these temptations are no different than those faced by others with unseen disabilities in the world of the physical or spiritual forces. The temptations that come into your life are no different from what others experience, and God is faithful. He will keep the temptations from becoming so strong that you can't stand up against it. When you are tempted, He will show you a way out so that you will not give into it. Our temptations in our sufferings may be different than those faced by those with challenges in a physical or spiritual condition, and so also God's offer of a way out and deliverance will also be different and diverse in nature. However different our salvation is in relationship with Christ, we are still equally united with one another. If one part suffers, all parts suffer with it. And if one part is honored, all the parts are glad. It is in overcoming this temptation to draw boundaries between one another that we see God's kingdom coming to fruition in the unity of our faith as a community that reflects the greatness and power of God in submission to one another's weaknesses and the lifting up of God's empowerment in each one of us. We become strong and great in His glory and name. Dietrich Bonhoeffer enriches the qualities of our Christian community when illustrating that in a Christian community, everything depends upon whether each individual is an indispensable link in a chain. Only when even the smallest link is securely interlocked is the chain unbreakable. A community which allows unemployed members to exist within it will perish because of them. It will be well, therefore, if every member receives a definite task to perform for the community, that he may know in hours of doubt that he too is not useless and unusable. Every Christian community must realize that not only do the weak need the strong, but also that the strong cannot exist without the weak. The elimination of the weak is the death of the fellowship. All praise to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. He is the source of every mercy and the God who comforts us. He comforts us so that we can comfort others. Since I know it is all for Christ's good, I am quite content with my weaknesses and with insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. The illusions of words, such as handicapped, disabled, and crippled, have no authority over us. The false depictions of our inabilities and distinctions of our not being able to participate in all aspects of community, employment, and social involvement have no power as to our human identities. Kay Arthur encourages us with the witness that so many times we say that we can't serve God because we aren't whatever is needed. We're not talented enough or smart enough or whatever. But if you are in covenant with Jesus Christ, He is responsible for covering your weaknesses, for being your strength. He will give you His abilities for your disabilities. It is with this vision that I take comfort in the knowledge that today I am weak in the grips of physical disability, but tomorrow I am strong. Today's present subjective illusions have become tomorrow's empowered objective realities. Praise God. Man, I just think back to when I first wrote this paper. And the things that I've learned since then, the experiences I've had being in a wheelchair as an incomplete quadriplegic after a spinal cord injury in 1994. His words still speak to me today. Paul's words still have this power and ability to transcend time. But I also see deeper things that have grown in me, greater understandings from what I wrote in the early 2000s. So, if we were to take a picture of some of those things that I've learned, let me just highlight a few that came to mind while I read this paper to you. First is the idea of joy. Joy, not grit, is the hallmark of holy obedience. And I think about all the experiences of joy I've had over the years, the times of being in house church with a group of others who face different challenges and disabilities. And some of the funny moments, some of the tears shed, some of the just the growth and the activity of community, doing life together. It instilled this incredible joy in our home and with our neighbors as we shared into the community and took part in many different events that were far bigger than we could even imagine that we were going to experience. It became something that overcame the challenges we were facing. And I know that there are times that I felt burnout. There are times that it was hard to say I was joyful. But looking back, I realize if people are going to receive an advocate voice for the disabled, for the life of disability, it needs to be infused and shared with joy. So I hold on to that word of promise today. Unity in disability is a forge of strength, not a detriment. That would be a thought that came to mind while I was reading. I've grown to recognize that disability presents itself in diversity within our personhood. While I focused in this more on just the physical presence of disability in my life years ago, I've come to recognize that it has a layered reality in my being. There's a maturity and awareness that my physical disability also affects my cognitive focuses, my mental well-being, and even my spiritual understanding. I've grown that I need to be aware not just of my physical disability, but also um, the mental disabilities that become almost a gift at times, and as well as challenges to allow Christ to overcome. They're things that are still developing. But in doing that, it also creates a unity. It forges me with empathy and compassion and relationships to others who are in that same dynamic of finding a definition of disability in their life. As I said to a friend recently in conversation, I don't want to allow the world's definition of disability to define my life. But I need to know and understand that there is definition of disability in my life, just as there is in others, as we grow in relationship and learn about ourselves and about each other in that forge of fire and wisdom and growth. And thankfully, we can give thanks that God and Christ is in that walk as well to instill and strengthen us in the incredible abilities that we are given from our disabilities. Together, we are stronger than if we were apart. Okay, one more highlight, and that was on the quote from Dietrich Bonhoeffer. As I read through it and reflected on it, I realized Dietrich Bonhoeffer might have just got it wrong. Community belonging is not just about vocation and having a task. It is about holding on to our shared well-beings in relationships together. Being in the present with others of all levels of ability brings a person's task into fulfillment as the others find dignity in a shared, caring, living environment together. When we are willing to embrace all, it is the embrace itself that becomes a communal vocation and task for all. And we are to do it well. All right. That is kind of a snapshot moment of my thoughts today. Let's build on it. Let me ask you the questions. What is Paul's words that I read to you today saying to you in this moment? How has his letters spoken truth to you in the disabled life and society? Maybe leave me a comment below in my Substack or drop me a message. And if you would really like to, let me know you'd like to be on the Well Dwellers podcast to share your story and what matters to you in a life of disability. My contact information is at the end of today's video, as it is in all my videos and podcast episodes. But also feel free to visit at thebottomofthewell.com anytime and join the conversation. I suppose that's it for today's Well Dweller moment. I hope it brings you encouragement. I hope you'd like to share it with others. Click the like button if you'd like. And tell others about the Well Dwellers podcast. I really appreciate any feedback or involvement you would like to have here at the Bottom of the Well. It is us together in conversation that stirs the waters as we think about these things. All right. Thank you for listening. Until we meet next time, my fellow well dwellers, I wish you well.